Control, and therefore proximity, is the most important mechanic that you need to be an expert in EU5. And this is especially true if you're a maritime nation like England, where you've got lots of naval provinces, because you can get control and proximity through sea zones very easily in EU5, much easier than over land. Just for a quick recap, each percent of control in your province gives you 1% of crown power, levy size, monthly manpower, pop assimilation speed, conversion speed, promotion speed, monthly sailors, and 0.5% market protection. Each percent of control above 50% reduces your mercenary size by 0.5, and each point of control below 50% has the inverse effect. Whereas your proximity, each point of it increases your maximum control by 0.75%. So in the early game, why is it so much easier to increase your proximity over naval sea zones rather than through land? Well, ultimately, gravel roads are just a bit crap. They do speed up your movement, increase your market access, and reduce your proximity cost by 20, which if it's a base value of 40, that's half. It's still not amazing, especially as your proximity goes down drastically as you get further and further away from your capital. So you end up just making bailiffs in most of your rural or high RGO provinces anyway. Whereas it's different through sea zones, a lot of the same mechanics are still in play, but as you can see in 1337, even though we've got a road that goes up slightly to the north of our country, most of our proximity in England is just done on our coastline, especially if you look at East Anglia where a lot of our starting population is. We have no roads there, but we have proximity just through these sea zones. So what are the modifiers that affect this? Well, let's look at Canterbury for example. It's connected to London, even though it's only 2 provinces away, through the sea zones. So we could think about building a road, and we might actually increase our proximity in this case. However, let's just investigate it from a naval perspective. London to the Thames Sea Zone only loses 3.4 proximity, down from 100. However, it takes a 36.8% hit by just going into the province. So why is this? Well, Canterbury specifically takes a big hit because it doesn't have a port, but it gets a slight reduction because of our ruler's administrative ability. As you can see, our 80 admin gives us minus 8% proximity cost. But this isn't static, it's multiplicative. It applies on the benefits for that province, so you don't just randomly have 8 proximity in the inland of your country for no reason. Whereas London to the Thames region is only minus 3.42. This is some huge discounts on this, such as development, the bridge in London, its harbour capacity, and as we spoke earlier, the administrative ability of our ruler. You can check the harbour capacity of a region by navigating to its traits here and looking on the right here, the little anchor. As you can see, London has a harbour capacity of 95%, mostly because of its natural harbour suitability, where it gets 85% from. This is huge. As you've just seen, it severely reduces proximity costs taken from London to get to its nearest sea zone, so it massively increases the leftover proximity that can go to our naval regions. To give you 2 comparable examples for these buffs, the Thames to Lowestoft is 36.8, whereas the travel from Thames to Colchester is minus 33.8. This has a reduction because it's got a wharf, which gives it a little bit of harbour capacity. As you can see, the 7.5% debuff there. Whereas Norwich, despite not being a naval province, is still taking proximity from Lowestoft because it travels from London to the Thames Sea region, from Thames to Lowestoft, and Lowestoft to Norwich. This is the same for Thetford and probably Bury, yes. So in your England games, something that I do very quickly is make a road not from London to Bury, Thetford and Norwich, but Lowestoft, because this is the source of proximity for now as it goes through the Thames Sea Zone. So you make it to go to Norwich and Thetford, as this is your high population region and you can get a lot of economic output out of this small region. When you go further out, it's more dependent on your maritime presence. So let's look at the Thames to the Strait of Dover sea region. That's taking a minus 16.1 reduction because we've only got 50% maritime presence in the Thames Sea region. As you can see, you have these base values, but they do go down as your maritime presence goes up. So if you get to 100 maritime presence, you will get 0 on these modifiers. So how do we see the maritime presence of a sea zone? So just click on it on the map, and you've got this little button down here. We are currently at 50%, but it is ticking down by 0.06 a month through decay. We get a certain amount for our port cities, our naval provinces, and they do tick it up. However, the biggest value you can do in the early game is simply just putting your navy in the sea zone. By doing this, you directly increase your presence by chucking your navy into the mix. And you can see that 9-ship first navy increases our maritime presence by 0.11 per month. So what buildings can we build in the early game to increase our harbour capacity and our maritime presence? That isn't just using a navy. Well, the earliest one you can do is a wharf. You can build this in your towns, and it essentially allows you to build ships in the province, gives you a monthly sailor, increases your trade capacity and your harbour capacity. And as we saw earlier, just 0.1 harbour capacity reduces that proximity cost by 7.5%, and that is ginormous. As you can see, we can't really build any, as we've already built it in our naval towns, but it is huge and major to get in your games. The other major one to get in the early game is fishing villages. And I know it's a peasantry building, but believe me, they are very strong. They can be built in your rural, coastal locations. They give trade capacity, and quite a lot of it, harbour capacity, and maritime presence. So you're not only just increasing the amount you can trade, you're getting a little bit of fish as a basic resource, but you're also increasing your control and proximity via your harbour capacity and your maritime presence. Luckily, you can pretty much build them anywhere, because in the early game, you don't have many towns, don't have many cities, and you need to be selective about where you build them and upgrade them. Definitely don't overlook these. They are really strong, and use them. There are also some unique technologies you can get, such as trade fleets that increases your maritime presence by 10%, exploration fleets in the Age of Discovery that does the same, coastal expansion that reduces your proximity cost through maritime regions directly, and established routes in the same age that reduces the decay of your maritime presence. So for example, if you put a navy there, you get it up high. It will decay faster over time as you've got it to a higher level. This will reduce how fast it decays. So if you're still sticking around, please consider subscribing. I've only been doing this a few weeks, so I'm still quite new to this. So any feedback or tips that you know yourself is very welcome. So finally, I guess the last bit of advice is just to be a bit clever and a bit concise with where and how you focus to get your proximity. Look at Canterbury. A road is probably the best option here, because the Thames to Canterbury debuff of -37 is a lot. So why don't we invest in building a road to Canterbury? Yeah, as we spoke about earlier, the Bury, Thetford, Norwich corridor, you can get control much better through the Lowesoft naval corridor rather than trying to build a road directly from London. Same with any control you've got on the south coast. You can use your naval ports as a source of that proximity and build roads out from there. So for example, maybe a Southampton road to Salisbury or Winchester could be a good idea. And just to jump in with one final tip, something I've learned whilst editing this video in fact, is that your harbour capacity can actually go over 100%, and the buffs that you get can stack beyond 100% capacity. So don't just shy away from increasing your harbours or adding more buildings into, say, London because it's got a really good natural harbour. You can stack these buffs and buff your proximity and the other buffs it provides, as you can see above with this. So thank you for watching. I do hope this helped you out and gave you a little bit of tips. However, we're still learning this game together, and not one of us is an expert yet. EU5 is so complex, it's got such a high skill floor, but also a humongous skill ceiling. So if you've got any tips or tricks that you know to increase this and reduce your proximity cost and increase your control, please let us know in the comments and share your tips with others. We're all learning together, and let's work through this. So let's work together and help each other. Thank you. Have a great day.
Subscribe, or I will rise up.